I used to think no one could disrespect my mother more than death did. But that was before Carla opened her mouth. If you've ever been hurt by something your partner's family said, comment 1. If you've ever walked away in silence as your strongest move, comment 2. The Hale estate looked like it had been peeled from the pages of an architectural magazine. Marble columns, glinting windows, lawn trimmed to military perfection. It was Rachel's 4th visit, and yet her palms still sweated as she stepped from the car, a cream-colored scrapbook clutched like a shield against her chest. She'd stayed up past midnight the last 3 evenings designing it. Each page curated with care, pressed flowers tucked between memories, textures layered like quiet hopes. She rang the side bell, as instructed. The main gate, apparently, was for deliveries. Carla answered the door herself. She looked perfect, as always, diamond studs glinting beneath a sleek bun, lips lacquered a muted red, the color of expensive detachment. Her smile was immediate, dazzling, and false. Rachel recognized it. It was the smile her high school principal wore when telling her mother, "Handmade cookies are sweet, but not food safe." "So thoughtful, dear," Carla said, accepting the scrapbook. Her fingers were cool against Rachel's. "You must have had time." Rachel blinked, smile tight. "I wanted it to feel personal." "How quaint." Carla's gaze lingered a beat too long on Rachel's flats before she turned. "Come in. Lucas is on the back terrace. The caterers are still setting up." Rachel followed, the air-conditioned silence swallowing her reply. She'd worn the floral dress Lucas once said brought out her eyes. It now felt childish in these cavernous halls filled with ancestral oil paintings and curated silence. The estate smelled faintly of citrus and polished wood, like wealth soaked into every surface. Lucas stood by the koi pond with a whiskey in hand, waving off her concern about the scrapbook with a half smile. "She's just nervous. This weekend is a big deal." "Nervous people forgot appointments," Rachel wanted to say. Nervous people didn't serve backhanded compliments with espresso, but she bit her tongue. She always did. Guests arrived in waves, men in pressed chinos and boat shoes, women in silk and casual opulence. Laughter flowed around Rachel like a current she couldn't enter. She lingered at the edge of conversations, offering smiles, nodding at jokes she didn't understand, clutching her sparkling water like a lifeline. Aubrey FaceTimed briefly from Austin. "Just remember who you are," she whispered. "Not who they expect you to be." Carla reappeared by Rachel's side like a shadow. "Lucas tells me your mother passed away recently?" Rachel nodded. 6 months ago. Carla's expression tightened, but not in sympathy. She must have done the best she could. Raising a child alone isn't easy. She did more than her best. "I'm sure." Carla sipped from a stemmed glass, eyes scanning the crowd. "Lucas says you're emotional. I suppose that's what happens when you're on your own. No one to model regulation." Rachel blinked. For a moment, the clink of cutlery and distant jazz dulled to a hush in her ears. Lucas was across the lawn, laughing at something his cousin had said. She excused herself quietly and wandered toward the buffet, where a staff member was refilling the charcuterie. The scent of brie and fig made her nauseous. She caught her reflection in the glass door. Posture too stiff, eyes tired. She looked like a guest at someone else's life. Later, under a vine-draped trellis, Carla breezed up again, a flute of champagne in one hand, the other gesturing elegantly toward a wedding planner clipboard. "We've finalized the slideshow with Lucas. We think it's best to keep things uplifting. No morbid imagery, of course." Rachel stiffened. "You mean photos of my mother?" "Well, darling, it is a celebration. We wouldn't want people to feel uncomfortable." Her heart thrummed so loud she could barely hear the rest of the sentence. Carla had turned to greet another guest, already dismissing the conversation. Rachel stood still for a long moment. Then, with a mechanical grace, she turned toward Lucas, who had just rejoined the group, his glass freshly filled, cheeks flushed from laughter. Rachel glances at Lucas for defense. He sips his wine and says nothing. A rehearsal dinner is where people pretend to get married. I realized I was pretending to belong. The private dining room smelled of white truffle oil and roses. Every table shimmered under low candlelight, and the chairs were upholstered in pale velvet, monogram napkins already folded into crisp fans atop each charger. The room buzzed with the practiced confidence of people who'd attended dozens of events like this and knew exactly when to laugh and how loudly. Rachel sat on the edge of her chair, smoothing the hem of her navy dress. She'd chosen the most neutral color she owned, something that wouldn't be accused of trying too hard or not trying enough. Her fingers played absently with the stem of her champagne flute. She hadn't taken a sip. Kate, her sister, was seated several seats down. She offered Rachel a brief, supportive smile, one that seemed to vanish before anyone else could notice. She looked out of place, too, her hair in a soft braid, her sandals understated in a room full of stilettos and smirks. Carla held court at the center of the long table, her laughter bell-clear and perfectly timed. Our Carla, someone had whispered earlier, and Rachel had wondered when she'd become an accessory rather than a guest. Lucas was talking with someone from his college rugby team, recounting a story that earned low, conspiratorial chuckles. He hadn't noticed Rachel's silence. Or maybe he had, and had mistaken it for grace. When the server cleared the first course, Rachel leaned toward Lucas and said softly, "I was thinking, maybe I could say a few words tomorrow. A minute, maybe, about my mom." Lucas blinked, then smiled gently. "I just think we should keep it light, babe. You know? Let's not make it heavy." He squeezed her hand briefly and returned to his conversation before she could reply. Rachel sat very still. Carla, who must have heard, turned to the group. "Oh, unless it's a funeral, darling," she said brightly. "Let's keep things light." A ripple of laughter passed down the table. Someone across from Rachel, a man with a gold watch and 2 white teeth, added, "Moms like hers always overcompensate." "It's sweet, really." Rachel's throat constricted. Her fingers stiffened around the base of the glass. Carla raised hers in mock salute. "To resilience, then. Some women do their best with what little they have." The laughter that followed was softer this time, more awkward, but it still filled the room. Lucas chuckled. He reached for the bottle and refilled his glass, then Rachel's, though hers remained untouched. "Cheers," he said, oblivious. Rachel turned to Kate, who was already looking at her with wide, worried eyes. Her ears buzzed. Her chest felt tight, not from rage, but from a slow, pressurized realization that she had reached the outermost edge of what she could absorb. The dessert plates arrived, small fussy confections, raspberry coulis swirled like paint. Rachel placed her fork down with a deliberateness that cut through the din. She stood. Conversation around her stumbled, then stalled. "Thank you all," she said, her voice even, though it rang louder than she expected. "For this preview of what's to come, I won't be needing a second performance." Carla blinked. Lucas furrowed his brow. Rachel slipped the engagement ring from her finger and set it gently on the folded napkin. No one said a word. She turned and walked out. No one followed. No one stopped her. I didn't run. I evacuated. And like any good exit strategy, mine was already drawn up. The apartment was silent except for the hum of the fridge and the distant traffic muted through double-pane windows. The kitchen still smelled faintly of fig jam and burnt toast from the weekend. Rachel stood barefoot on the cold tile, laptop open, tabs stacked like soldiers on the screen. Joint account, vendor spreadsheets, Dropbox folders. One by one, she moved through them with surgical calm. First, the florist. Canceled. No refund. But that didn't matter anymore. Then the caterer. Then the planner. She transferred exactly half of the joint savings into her own account. Not a penny more. Not a penny less. She included a note in the ledger. Per pre-marriage agreement, 50% division. She wasn't leaving questions, only facts. Her phone buzzed with another text from Kate. "What happened? Are you okay?" Rachel didn't answer. Not yet. She turned to the counter and slid a piece of thick stationery from the drawer, the kind Carla insisted on ordering in bulk, embossed with the Hail monogram. Rachel flipped it to the blank side. The words came clean and swift. Lucas, I won't ask you to understand. I only ask that you don't reframe. This was never about a single moment, but the erosion of many. I've taken what belongs to me. The rest is yours to explain. No blame, no apology. Just the kind of clarity she'd once thought belonged only in boardrooms. She packed only what mattered. Her laptop, backup drive, passport, the folder of design samples she'd never shown Carla. A framed photo of her mother, smiling beneath a red umbrella. A wool dress her mom had called her power dress. 2 pairs of shoes. 1 bottle of shampoo she couldn't replace in Texas. In the closet, Lucas's tuxedo still hung from its dry cleaning sleeve. She left it there, untouched. He was still asleep in the bedroom, sprawled diagonally across the bed as if rehearsing for a life without borders. The sound machine hummed waves beside him, oblivious to the real tide already pulling away. Rachel carried her bag quietly to the elevator. When it dinged open, she paused just long enough to take a breath. A clean one. Once in the car, she plugged in her phone and called Aubrey. Hey, her best friend answered immediately. Do I need bail money or just breakfast tacos? I don't need saving, Rachel said. Just a clean desk and decent Wi-Fi. You got it. Monica said you can use the spare office at the co-op. And Rachel? I'm proud of you. Rachel smiled faintly. Tell Monica thank you, and make sure she knows I bring my own coffee. The drive from Napa to Austin was 27 hours, but Rachel wasn't counting. She wasn't escaping, she was reclaiming. She stopped only for fuel and black coffee, bypassing hotels, her mind sharper than it had been in months. As she merged onto the interstate, her tires thudded past the familiar turnoff to the Hale estate. She didn't glance at the gates, but a slideshow played anyway, not of a wedding, but of her own life restarting. Her mother's voice from years ago surfaced softly. You don't need loud people to be heard. You just need to know your worth. She drove faster. Just as she crossed into Arizona, the sky opening wider than she'd remembered it could, her phone buzzed against the console. Lucas. Rachel powered it off without hesitation. The world outside grew larger, freer. Some people run away. I drove toward something better. By September, the Austin heat had softened into a late summer warmth that lingered in the air like memory. Rachel parked beneath a jacaranda tree, shedding purple blossoms onto the sidewalk, then stepped out into a neighborhood that still smelled faintly of paint, espresso, and sawdust. The arts district pulsed with quiet movement. Graphic murals climbing brick facades, open studio windows echoing with laughter. The whir of espresso machines from Monica's cafe drifting across the street like a greeting. Rachel wore the same gray blazer she'd interviewed in 4 years ago. Sleeves rolled, sketchbook tucked under one arm. This time, there was no interview. Just the key Aubrey had left under the ceramic planter on the porch, and a desk carved from salvaged wood in the corner of a cooperative studio space. Her corner. Monica had greeted her that first week with a crisp nod and a single line. If you're gonna sit here, make it count. And Rachel had, quietly, consistently. Today, she slid a new draft across the table toward Monica, who adjusted her glasses, eyes sharp as ever. The logo Rachel had designed for the cafe, Monica's pride and joy, curved elegantly across the screen in shades of rust and sage. It's clean, Monica said after a beat. Balanced, but... Rachel waited. Monica pushed her glasses up. But it's not dangerous. You're talented, kid. But you're hiding. Where's the fire? Rachel bristled, then sat back. This is what the client asked for. And what do you want? Monica asked, folding her arms. You didn't come here to be a request machine. You came to reclaim something. So reclaim it. The silence between them filled with the low hiss of milk steaming behind the bar. Later that night, alone in Aubrey's spare room, Rachel opened her old college folder. Buried beneath half-finished projects and forgotten fonts was a logo she'd drafted years ago and never used. A delicate rose, blooming from the ashes of a matchstick. She opened a new sketch and typed, Rose and Ash, Studio for Reclamation Design. It wasn't a business plan. Not yet. But it was a declaration, a name that felt like her mother's voice on paper. 3 weeks passed. Rachel balanced freelance projects by day, Rose and Ash concepts by night. She reclaimed her sense of rhythm. Monica continued to challenge her, push her, but now with a glint of approval that surfaced when Rachel didn't shrink from criticism. One Thursday morning, Monica dropped a thick envelope on Rachel's desk without preamble. Catalyst Summit is accepting keynote portfolios. Deadline's tomorrow. Rachel looked up. I'm not ready for that. Monica just raised an eyebrow and walked away. That evening, Rachel worked late. She didn't fill out the application. She told herself she wasn't ready, that she'd try next year. But 2 weeks later, she opened her inbox and stared. The subject line read, Congratulations. You've been selected as a keynote designer. I thought I was ready. But I didn't expect the tuxedos to carry ghosts. The lobby of the Hilton Dallas glowed under cool chandeliers, buzzing with lanyards, name tags, and the perfume of industry ambition. Rachel adjusted her blazer, double-checked her slides on the monitor behind the stage curtain, and took a steadying breath. Her palms were dry. Her voice rehearsed. But her chest buzzed like static. The last time she wore heels in a ballroom, someone had laughed at her mother. She shook the thought loose. This wasn't a rehearsal dinner. This wasn't their table. This was her table. Aubrey squeezed her hand backstage. Monica hovered nearby, arms crossed, phone tucked away. A rare show of full attention. It's just another room, she said. Except now they have to listen. Rachel stepped into the light. She didn't speak right away. She let the room settle. Then she began. Rose and Ash began as a sketch on a napkin in a city I didn't expect to love, she said. It was born not in a pitch meeting, but in the quiet after everything else fell apart. It's a studio rooted in reclamation, of voice, of space, of dignity. The screen behind her shifted through minimal slides, burned textures, blooming roses, layered motifs of family, silence, revival. Her cadence was slow, deliberate. She spoke not like someone asking to be taken seriously, but like someone who already had been and no longer required permission. When the final slide faded, the applause rose in waves. From the front row, Monica nodded once, crisp and satisfied. Aubrey wiped under her eyes. Rachel didn't see them at first. But when she stepped from the stage, heading for the networking lounge, she caught the pale blue silk of a dress she knew too well. Carla. Standing stiff beside the media booth, flanked by 2 assistants. Her expression was unreadable. Maybe stunned. Maybe calculating. She didn't smile. Next to her, Lucas. A tuxedo. The same easy posture. The same guarded charm. But the ring on his finger now belonged to someone else. Hannah, apparently, who hovered beside him, visibly pregnant and visibly confused. Rachel's eyes met his only briefly. Then she turned. The next segment was the awards and recognition section. Rachel hadn't planned to stay, but Monica gave her a look she knew better than to ignore. Sit. The MC took the stage and read from a card. And now we'd like to invite Ms. Carla Hale, Executive Chair of the Women's Creative Business Fund, to present this year's Rising Innovator Award. The name was announced. Rachel Bennett. A slow silence. Then polite applause. Rachel rose, walked, and Carla, caught in the machinery of public expectation and perfectly positioned cameras, stepped forward. They met at center stage. Rachel extended her hand. Carla hesitated. Just enough for the cameras to notice, but then she took it. Her grip was cool, firm, posed. Rachel held the shake for exactly 2 seconds longer than necessary, her smile poised, her posture unshakable. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. The room already knew. The photo was taken, the plaque handed off, the applause offered. Rachel stepped down. She didn't look back. Later, at the cocktail reception, Lucas appeared near the refreshment table, hands in his pockets. Can we talk? He asked, voice low. Rachel turned slowly, her expression calm. The air between them stilled. The moment waited. Lucas approaches afterward. Can we talk? The morning fog hadn't lifted when Rachel pulled into the quiet cemetery just outside Austin. The gravel crunched beneath her tires, slow and steady, like she was being granted permission to enter. She parked beneath the oak tree at the far end, same spot as before. It had been nearly a year. The sky was the color of ash. The sun, somewhere behind it, waited. She stepped out, holding nothing but a folded piece of paper and a single rose. Her mother's headstone was modest. Granite, smooth and low. The kind she'd have picked for herself. Unpretentious, warm in tone, practical in price. Rachel knelt beside it, brushing away the film of yellowing leaves at the base. The wind stirred gently, like someone breathing near her ear but saying nothing. Hey, Mom, she murmured, voice small in the open space. I know. It's been too long. She sat cross-legged on the damp grass. Her coat pooled beneath her knees. From her pocket, she drew out the folded speech, creased at the edges, ink a little smudged. This was supposed to be for the wedding, she said with a faint smile. But that's obviously off the table. She unfolded the paper and cleared her throat. I wanted to say something that day about how you taught me what love really looks like. Not the grand gestures, not the perfect dinner parties or champagne flutes. Love, to you, was remembering someone's comfort food without them asking. It was sewing the hem on a dress before I even realized it was torn. It was silence when I needed space, and loud cheering when I didn't believe in myself. She paused, blinking back something warm at the corners of her eyes. And I let people tell me that wasn't enough. That your kind of love didn't prepare me for the real world, but the truth is it prepared me for something better. The ability to walk away from anything that asked me to shrink. A bird called distantly. She reached forward and placed the rose against the base of the stone. I'm building something now, she said quietly. A space that feels like you. And me. And everything in between. She stood slowly, dusting off her coat. Before leaving, she tapped her fingers once, gently, against the top of the stone. Like knocking on a door she knew would always open. The crowd at the Rose and Ash studio was small but intentional. Designers, collaborators, former clients turned friends. Monica stood near the back with a coffee she wouldn't finish. Aubrey, radiant in a mustard blazer and red lipstick, was already orchestrating introductions like a conductor. There were no streamers, no banners, just candlelight, art, and quiet jazz filtering from the overhead speakers. The walls bore Rachel's newest collection, identity-based branding work for women-owned businesses. Each framed poster told a story. A florist who escaped domestic abuse, a tattoo artist who transitioned at 42, a farm co-op in New Mexico rebuilding after drought. Near the entrance, a simple brass plaque read, Rose and Ash Studio, built from quiet courage. Rachel stood near the center, holding a worn note card. Her mother's handwriting was tucked in her wallet, but tonight she needed her own words. She glanced around the room. People were listening. She began. When I left California, I didn't know what I was running toward. I only knew what I couldn't stay for. A life that asked me to be agreeable, silent, ornamental. The room fell still. Even the jazz faded in the background. I didn't start Rose and Ash to prove anything. I started it because there were stories I wasn't hearing in boardrooms and branding decks. Stories like mine, like yours. Stories that deserved their own table, not just a seat at someone else's. She looked toward the far corner where Monica stood, arms folded but soft-eyed. Next to her, Aubrey dabbed at her lower eyelid with a cocktail napkin. This studio is a place for second drafts, for designs born from fire, for the belief that being overlooked doesn't mean being lesser. It just means we have to write our own legends. She smiled, small but unshakable. My mother never saw this space, but she built the blueprint. Soft applause began, then grew. Not raucous, not performative, just genuine. hands clapping not out of politeness but recognition. Rachel stepped down and exhaled. Later that night, she sat on the back patio, shoes off, legs tucked beneath her. A candle flickered beside her tea. The wind had picked up slightly, but it was gentle, reassuring. She opened her phone to a message from a journalist she hadn't yet met. "Saw your space tonight. I'd love to feature Rose and Ash in our spring issue. Let me know." Rachel smiled and typed, "Let's talk next week." She looked out at the night sky, soft and open. Then, almost without thinking, she pulled the photo of her mother from her wallet and set it beside the candle. "They know now," she whispered, voice warm with certainty. "But I knew all along." The afternoon light cut through the cafe's front windows in long, clean lines. Rachel stirred her espresso slowly, watching the crema swirl before settling. The seat across from her was still empty, but she wasn't anxious. She'd arrived early on purpose. Something about choosing the space first made the moment feel more hers. Carla Hale was exactly on time. Of course she was. She entered like a signature, composed, crisp, deliberately understated. A beige trench coat, pearls, a purse with handles that never slumped. Rachel watched her scan the room the way she always had, as if calculating whether this space was worthy of her presence. Their eyes met. No nods, no smiles. But Carla walked over. "Rachel," she said, placing her gloves on the table before sitting. "I didn't expect you'd agree to meet." "I almost didn't," Rachel replied, not cruelly, just honestly. A waiter approached, but Carla waved him off. "I won't be long." Rachel took a slow sip of coffee, waiting. Carla folded her hands. "I saw your interview last week. Rose and Ash featured in Design Epoch. You spoke well." Rachel gave a small smile. "I wasn't trying to impress anyone." Carla's lips curved ever so slightly. "That's what made it work." For a moment, silence. The cafe buzzed with soft conversation, the occasional clink of ceramic. Outside, Austin moved on, indifferent. "I didn't come to rehash the past," Carla said eventually. "I know you've moved forward." Rachel leaned back. "Then why are we here?" Carla hesitated, something Rachel had never seen from her before. Then, "Because there are things I said that I would not want my own daughter to carry with her. And yet I know I said them to you." Rachel blinked once. She wasn't expecting an apology, and she still wasn't sure this counted as one. "What exactly do you think I carried?" she asked. Carla's gaze dropped for the briefest moment. "Judgment, condescension, the assumption that you didn't belong." "You didn't assume it," Rachel said quietly. "You built it into every word." Another pause. "I was protecting Lucas," Carla said, "in the way I knew how." Rachel's eyebrows lifted. "From what? Someone who loved him without needing to control him?" Carla opened her mouth, then closed it. Rachel continued, voice calm. "Lucas didn't need protecting. He needed a mirror. And all I did was show him who he became when he let others speak for him." That landed. Carla's breath caught, imperceptibly, but Rachel saw it. "I don't hate you," Rachel added after a beat. "I don't even think about you most days." Carla's jaw tightened slightly, but not in offense, more like in realization. "I used to think silence was the only way to survive a room you didn't belong in," Rachel said. "Now I know I was never meant to be in those rooms at all. I was meant to build my own." Carla sat very still, her spine perfectly straight. "Do you regret walking away?" Rachel didn't hesitate. Not for a single second. Carla nodded slowly, as if she'd expected that but needed to hear it said aloud. "I suppose I wondered," she said, "if perhaps in another life things might have unfolded differently." "They did," Rachel said. "This life. And I like how it's unfolding just fine." For the first time in the conversation, Carla smiled. Not the polite kind. Not the superior curve of control. Just something weary. Almost human. I see your mother in you, you know, she said. Rachel's fingers paused on her cup. She never flinched. Carla continued. Even when she knew the room was tilted against her, there was something unshakable about her. She didn't need approval to know her worth, Rachel said. She just needed to live it. And now you do too, Carla said quietly. Rachel didn't reply. The silence stretched, but it wasn't strained. Finally, Carla reached for her gloves. Well, I believe we've said what needed to be said. She stood, adjusted her coat. Rachel stayed seated. At the threshold, Carla paused and turned. I imagine this won't change how you see me. No, Rachel said gently, but it might change how you see yourself. And maybe that's a start. Carla's eyes met hers. She gave a small, measured nod. Then she left. Rachel stayed another 20 minutes, watching the sun slip past the edge of the window frame. She didn't feel triumphant. She felt clean, like the room had been cleared of dust that no longer belonged to her. She pulled out her phone and opened her calendar. 2 client calls, a team brainstorm, a pitch due next week. The world was moving, and for the first time in a long time, she wasn't running from anything. She wasn't waiting for approval. She wasn't proving a thing. She was simply building. From rose, from ash. From the silence she no longer owed to anyone. And this time, the room was hers. She didn't shout, didn't slam doors, didn't leave a trail of ruin. She simply walked away, and that was enough to collapse everything built on condescension. What they mistook for silence was, in truth, a quiet strategy. A woman drawing the map back to her own worth. When injustice is met with unwavering clarity, even the most polished masks must fall. Sometimes dignity isn't loud. It just refuses to kneel. If you felt this story deep in your chest, like a truth finally named, drop a 1 in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories where justice doesn't whisper, it roars.